Shabbat Shalom. I know that this service was a little different, and I appreciate what Stefania had to say this morning. It's important that we allow people to speak from their hearts, share what the Lord has done, and especially when it comes to acknowledging the blessing and the strength that comes from being part of a community. And I'm grateful for our community. I'm grateful for the love you show, not only for myself and my wife, but for each other, for the generosity that you have. And so in not just financially, but in time and spending time and praying for and doing things for one another. Giving is much more than just financial. And so we need to understand that. I thank Tamara Silverman for being with us and encourage you not only to get and fill out that paper, but to go to her website and find out what's going on with that. And she can give you information on how you can follow her and what's going on. And I also want to encourage you, if you haven't already registered, we are going to Israel in November, and we would love for you to come to Israel along with us. Amen? Amen. So let's dig into this week's Parsha. I have notes. I have made an extensive outline and painstakingly wrote every word that I plan to share this morning on this little 3x5 card. So we shouldn't be here any longer than about an hour and a half from now off of those notes. So I want to remind everybody two things as we begin. One is, please, if these messages are a blessing to you, share them on Facebook with other people. There are a lot of people all over the country and all over the world that don't have the blessing of having a local community, and so it's a blessing to share. Also, I want to invite you, if you haven't been coming out to our study on Tuesday night on the book of the Revelation, that you should come out and be part of that, and also share that on Facebook and those kind of things. Also, all of the notes, not the notes, but all of the slides for the presentations on Tuesday night are on the website. If you just go and look up the book of Revelation through the Tanakh on the website, all of the slides are on there, so that, because on the video they're backwards. We use English with Hebrew format because the camera reverses everything. So if you're trying to read the slides, you'll have to read it backwards, mirrored. So this way we provide you the slides, and they'll be up there on Monday so that you can have them ready, so that if you're not here with us, you can open it up on your computer next to the other computer and follow along with us. If you can't open it up on your computer and follow along using the slides, they created this really great tool to follow along in Scripture. It's called a Bible. And all of the verses we'll go over is in that book already prepared for you. So all you have to do is open that book and follow along with us if you can't do it the other way. Amen? Amen. Amen. This week we're in Parsha Tetzaveh. Yes? Yes? Okay. And you shall command the people of Israel that they bring you pure beaten olive oil for the lamp to burn always. In the tent of meeting outside the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his son shall order it from evening till morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever for all to all the generations on behalf of the people of Israel. And take you Aaron, your brother, and his sons. And he's talking to Moses. That's why it says Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him from among the people, that he may minister to me in the priest's office. Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, Ithamar, and Aaron's sons. And you shall make holy garments for Aaron, your brother. Now, I hope that you took the time to read all of the verses of this week's Parsha. I know that, like last week's Parsha, there's a lot of just information. You're going to make this and this and do this and this. But every word in there is about the Messiah. Every word in there relates to him as our high priest, as our Redeemer, as our Savior, as our God. All of those things are in these words, so we need to understand that as we go through. And I wanted to go through a couple of things. One is, people ask always about the Urim and the Thummim. What is it? What are those? We read about them, Clearly, they're important. They're of great value. They provide answers to problems. And I don't know about you, but anything in the Bible that says, and if you have a question, use this to find the answer, I kind of get interested in. Because I have lots of questions I need answers to, and lots of situations I would like to know exactly what to do. In my life, I wake up just like you do, and situations arise, and people come to me and say, Rabbi, I have this situation, what should I do? And I would love to have something that I could just, like the 8-ball, you remember the magic 8 balls? You know, maybe. You know, does Pammy love me? Ask again. Does Pammy love me? Maybe. You know? And so we have those things sold millions. And they didn't actually answer anything. These two, whatever they were, that were kept in the breastplate, were given by God to give answers to the high priest. And so I thought to myself, I'd love to know what those things are. I'd love to have those so that when people came up to me and said, Rabbi, what should I do? I'd be able to answer them with assurance. Because a lot of times when I answer people, I say, well, this is what I would do. But I'm not sure it's the right thing. It's just what I would do. I hope it's the right thing. I hope it's what we should do. And I'm sure most of you do the same things. You have a situation that presents itself. You look at the situation. You look at the scriptures. You pray about it. And then you hope you made the right decision. So, today I'm going to give you the answer you've been waiting for. What are the Urim and Thummim? And the answer is, nobody knows. I mean, I'd love to be able to give you a more definitive answer than that of exactly what they are, but we don't know. There are all kinds of ideas. Rabbinic writings gives us information of what they think it was or how it could have worked. There are statements about that they were like crystals, that the light of the menorah or the light of the presence of God would shine upon, and somehow they would either holographically give an answer, they would shine on the breastplate giving an answer, there's all kinds of ideas, but we just don't know. And I think we're not supposed to know. The reason I think we're not supposed to know is because the words Urim and Thummim mean light and perfection. And I think that the Lord doesn't want us to look at stones or crystals to find out what to do, but I think He brought us the light of the world and the one who is perfect. And He wants us to look to Him for the answer and not to anything that's made from the world. And so, as we look through that and we look through the rest of the things going on with the priest, I was moved this week when I was reading about the breastplate. And you can see a kind of a picture of the breastplate on there. The guy looks like a Vulcan. Doesn't he look like a Vulcan from Star Trek? The high priest? I didn't realize maybe that's because of Leonard Nimoy. He was Jewish. He was the one that made the live long and prosper comes from the priestly blessing. So maybe that's why they chose to make him look like a Vulcan. But you have the breastplate. And the breastplate was made up of three main things. There was the breastplate that actually sat in the front that had the 12 stones with the names of the tribes on them. It had the two shoulder pieces with the onyx stones with the name of the tribes on them. And then they were connected by a gold chain. So it made it one, but it was three. Right? And we know the number 3 deals with resurrection. It also deals with the nature of God, who is our Father. He is also our Redeemer. He is also our redemption and the work of the Spirit in our life. So the number 3 connected, not, no one part of it could be whole without all of it. Just like God is only God when He is all that He is, and so He can't be separated. He is echad. He is one. He's not a committee of three. He's not, God and then, other members of the committee having meetings and stuff. If He was, nothing would get done. Isn't that what committees do? Committees are invented to form other committees, right? Isn't that why we have committees, so that we can have other committees? We have a committee on committees to make other committees to make committees so that we never accomplish anything. God doesn't work that way. But God is a unique unity. And in so, we have that kind of representation of that. And we know the high priest is a representation of Yeshua, but the high priest is also a representation of us. Because God's plan was that all of us would be kings and priests. It's in both the Brit Chadashah, the New Covenant writings, the Apostolic writings, and it's also in the Tanakh. That God's plan was that all of Israel, both those that are natural-born Israel and those grafted into Israel, would become both kings and priests. And so not only is the priest representative of Yeshua, but is representative of us. And so when we look at the breastplate, we start, for the sake of this discussion, looking at the onyx stones that were on the shoulders. The onyx stones were made up exactly the same. They were both the same size, the same shape. They were made out of the same thing. Onyx is a black stone, right? So it's this black stone, and it's got the names of the tribes on it. And I believe that's demonstrating that God's people, Israel, in God's view, are all exactly the same. Made up of all the different peoples, but exactly the same. There's neither Jew nor Greek, neither male nor female, neither free nor bond, but we were all one in Messiah, right? Amen. So the shoulder pieces that the high priest carried on his shoulder, carried the weight of, and the government, the ruling will be upon my shoulders, and carried later on when he walked on earth, he carried the execution stake on his shoulders. He carried our atonement on his shoulders. All of that he carried on his shoulders, and all of us receive exactly the same thing. Next week, I think we go into Kitisa, the gathering of the census money, where everybody gave half a shekel. Everybody was valued exactly the same. And so the onyx stones show us that in God's eyes we are exactly the same. All of us are of equal value. No one is better than the other. No one is more valuable than the other. We're all the same. And I thought, that's pretty interesting. It's really good. It's really cool. I like that. I like that we're all uniquely the same. And then you look at the breastplate. The breastplate is also made up of the 12 tribes and the names of the 12 tribes. They're all together, but they're all different. Each one unique in color, shape, size, and yet one. And so I thought, the breastplate represents us. In God's eyes, each one of us is an individual. Each one of us is unique in shape and color. Some of us are more interesting shapes than others, but shapes and colors. Some larger, some smaller. But all together, we're still Israel. We have different purposes. We have different strengths. Some of us are better at things than others. Some of us are better and more talented in music or dance or math or science or English. I am so grateful for the people that turn what I do into English. Catherine does that each week. I write out my blog and I send it to her and I say, please translate this into English so I can send it off to people. Robin does a lot of that for me, editing my language into English, because I speak New York English with a South Florida accent blended with Alabama and Northwest Florida and some New Jersey. Because I still call the things you pull in and out of a bureau drawers. You call them drawers. down here, right? I call them draws. So when I tell Pammy to go reach go reach in the drawers and get something, down here that has an entirely different meaning. To me, it's pull out the little thing and get the spoon out. In the South, draws is an entirely different thing. But so I have these things that are still part of who I am, and so it has to be converted into English so the rest of people can read it and understand what I meant, not what I said. And that's what I tell to Pammy all the time. She says, "But this isn't what you said." I said, "That doesn't matter. You know what I meant. You should respond to what I meant, not to what I said." So we look at the uniqueness of the breastplate and we see that each one of us has a different heritage, a different genealogy, a different background. We have different cultural things that have affected us as we traveled and our families traveled and all that. I love certain things, like I love Philippine food. I love lumpia. I would eat lumpia every day if I could just get someone to make them for me. Okay? I love Italian food, especially Sicilian food. My grandmother made Sicilian food for me because my stepfather his background was from Sicily, so she made Sicilian food. I love cultural Sicilian food, and I love gravy on my pasta. And I said that just for Sarah, who's watching online, who will be cringing now because she says it's sauce, not gravy. It's culture. So each of us has a unique culture that we bring together, but without all of that, the breastplate wouldn't be what it was supposed to be. Without all of us, we don't make the kingdom what it's supposed to be. So when we look at each other and we say, well, I don't do that, that's different, that's a good thing. As long as it's not that they're doing sin, it's a good thing that they're doing different. Because that difference is what makes all the gems what they're supposed to be in the breastplate. And so like every other thing Jewish, there's two views of how God looks at us. We go, well, what's this mean? Well, it could mean this, or it can mean that. The breastplate is made up of the identical exactness, that we're all exactly alike, and the uniqueness that we're all individual at the same time. And that's connected by the gold, which represents God's righteousness and purity and holiness. And it's God that makes us uniquely the same and uniquely different and identically the same, while at the same time being absolutely different and still be one. People say, how do you express who God is? Well, we can't, because it's more than we can understand with our words, with anything we can put together. It's the same thing with who are we. We are absolutely exactly the same, but absolutely exactly different. And that's good. And it's the way it's supposed to be. And so the breastplate was significant in that way. Now, it's also important to remember that while the people were carried on the shoulder, they were also carried on his heart. And in that breastplate was where the Urim and Tumim were kept, inside of a pouch or a pocket that was part of that. Now, it's interesting to me as we look at all these things that this week's Parsha begins with the words, "And you shall command the people of Israel that they bring you pure beaten olive oil for the light, for the lamp to burn always." You know, it's interesting, and Rob shared this at our Bible study, a Torah study on Wednesday or Thursday, I forget which one he shared it in, that last week when we read Parshat Terumah, it said, we only want those with a willing heart. Command those with a willing heart to do this. Now in this Parsha, it doesn't say with a willing heart. It just says, command the people to bring me pure, beaten olive oil. The word beaten there can mean beaten or broken. And I was thinking about that in the context of all that's going on, because the things that we're dealing with as we enter the tabernacle, you have the altar of sacrifice, you have the brazen laver, you have the altar of incense, you have the menorah, you have the table of showbread, and then inside the Holy of Holies you have the Ark of the Covenant. And each of those things are a combination, in order to make them, of both the effect of beating or molding, shaping, and the effect of light and fire. There's a connection between those things. And I was thinking about that and thinking about this priest that we're all supposed to be in the likeness of the Messiah, because our priesthood is supposed to be following his. Just like Aaron's sons were supposed to follow Aaron's example, we're supposed to follow his example and walk the way he did, and make intercession the way he did, and care about people the way he did, and do all the things the way he did. So we look at that way, and I was thinking that in order to release the oil, in order for the fire to be applied, the olives had to be broken. And I thought about us, and that, the olive tree of Israel, so if Israel is the olive trees, then we're the olives, or the leaves, but I like olives better for this point of view. And in order for God to be able to use us to do what he wants to do, to bring light to the world, we first have to be broken. So that the oil can be activated. Because the presence of God, he breathed into us the breath of life, and his Spirit is what gave us that, right? You can say, yes, it's true. I'm not making this up, I promise you. And so all of that is there, and we have to, like the olive, we have to be broken so that we can then be used to be a light to the world, just as he was broken so that he could be a light to the world. And become this priest, because this happens before the priest. You can't have the priest's clothes until after you have the olive oil and the light begins to shine. One of the reasons we had bad priests was because they used the wrong light. They used the wrong fire. Nadab and Abihu took the fire, strange fire, and tried to light the incense. It doesn't work that way. That's what happens when we're not broken. Stefani was sharing this morning about how the Lord has used this situation to break her. And if you listened, it was not just one time. But that as time went on and different experiences happened, she had to be broken over and over and over. And each time God used it to be a light to other people. If you listen to her testimony, she was here and this happened, and she got to be a light to this person and that person and that person and that person. And those people got to see something about God because of that light that was shined. And when we deal with all of those things, and if we believe what the rabbis say, that somehow light reflected from the Urim and Thummim and brought answers. And if we understand that the Urim and Thummim is light and perfection, then we understand that if we're broken the way we're supposed to be, that his light will shine as we become branches of the menorah that he's the center branch of. And then because that light shines, people will see his perfection. And it's that perfection. Now, it's interesting that the word perfection in Hebrew brings more and not perfection in the way like, as in nothing is ever wrong, but perfection in the way of maturity and growth. And that the ministry is for the perfecting of the saints. It's not so that I can teach and you'll become perfect, although if it were up to me, that's what it would mean. Because I'd like you guys to be perfect. because it would make my job easier. If everybody did everything right all the time, I would have the easiest job in the world. Now I can only count on Pammy to do that. Mrs. Wright. And her first name is Always. But maturity comes when God's light shines on a situation. If you listen to Stefania's talk earlier, as God shined his light on her situation, she grew. Her first response was a response that many of us would have. But God didn't leave her there. She was broken. The oil flowed. The light shined. And she matured. And that'll keep happening in her life, and it should keep happening in our lives. The more I thought about this, the more I delved into it, the more I dug into it, the more I understood that our job as priests, through our prayers and intercession, as part of that spiritual thing that happens in the body, is not to pray that situations will change, but that people will change. Because God can change the situation as we get to where we're supposed to be. There's a lot of things that we'd like to have that we can't have because we're not mature enough to have them yet. That's why if you watch people that win the lottery, anybody play the lottery? Oh, don't raise your hands, I don't want to. Just kidding. People who win the lottery and just a couple years later they're all broke. Because having money isn't the same as being mature enough to have money. And so God gives us things in our promised land. As the scripture says, ma'at ma'at, little by little, he drives out the adversary, and we mature into it, and then we take it step by step by step as he provides. And then as we step in, we can affect everything around us. And the more light we shine, the more broken we are. And when I say broken, I'm not talking about necessarily painful. Because sometimes we connect broken with painful, like the only way I'm going to grow is if I suffer. I believe that's God's last choice, not his first choice. Too many of us think that's God's first choice. I'm going to fix you by making you miserable, by making you suffer. But God's the perfect parent, and I raised my children, and I never got up in the morning and said, I want my child to behave, so I'm going to make him suffer this morning. It only got to chastisement after all of the other methods of encouragement took place. So when I'm talking about being broken, I just mean submitting ourselves to him. Laying ourselves down on the altar, understanding that he's sovereign over every part of our life, not just the parts that are convenient to us this morning. And so being broken doesn't mean suffering. It means submitting. And you can submit without suffering. I've said before, and this will be my first closing. I said before, and I just want you to understand, I think making beds is the most ridiculous thing human beings do. I do. I think if you just get out of bed and throw the sheets down. I'm not talking about changing beds. Okay, I understand that periodically you have to get the funk off. But making bed, get up in the morning, if you just take your blanket and do this, then when you get in bed at night, you just have to take the blanket and do this. And you're set. But my wife thinks you have to make the bed. And so I understood at an early age in our marriage that I was going to submit. It was just a matter of whether I was going to willingly submit out of love or I was going to submit out of safety and self-preservation. And tranquility. And so I wake up in the morning, and you can ask Pammy. She gets up before I do because it takes her longer to get ready. Don't understand, but it's okay. But because I'm usually the last one to get out of bed in the morning, I make the bed every day. I think it's dumb. I will never not think it's dumb. I don't think she's dumb, don't get me wrong. Because to her, that's an important thing. To me, it is like the least important thing I do every day. But I submit. So I'm broken in that aspect of my life. And I make the bed. It's not painful. It takes me a few seconds. I cheat. I don't do it like the military anymore. I'm not sure the sheet's all flat and everything doesn't have hospital corners. You can't bounce a quarter off my bed. Matter of fact, I don't think you could bounce a boulder off my bed. But it looks nice, and that's enough. It doesn't mean pain. It means submission. Being broken, not my will, but your will in every aspect of our life. When we're broken in that way, the oil of God can flow and His light shines. And then people see Him because of the maturity. They see the light and they see the perfection. When we're in unity in our diversity, and when we're in unity in our sameness, connected by His righteousness, by His purity, by His glory. Let's all stand. If you'll gather together with your loved ones, for the Aaronic benediction. I was listening on the radio the other day as you're gathering together. I was listening on the radio the other day as a preacher said, we're going to close with the Aaronic benediction. And I was listening to his message before, and I said, isn't it ironic that that's how he ended that message? It is the Aaronic benediction. The Birkat HaKohanim, the priestly blessing. It was these words, I believe, that Yeshua, when the scripture says, and Yeshua overlooked Jerusalem and he raised his hands and blessed. I believe this was the blessing that he said. So gather with your loved ones. Yevarechech Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav alecha v'tunecha. Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua Meshekenu Sar Shalom, in the name of Yeshua our Messiah, the Prince of Peace. Amen v'amen. Shabbat Shalom.